Rob, if you'll help us with that, please.
It would be my pleasure. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whichever time zone you're in. Great to have you here. Thanks for coming out. The third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. I hope everybody's got your big book, a highlighter, a pen, and a piece of paper. Don't forget, it's a facilitated meeting, which means your questions will be at the end of the meeting. So, the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage to self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent. All right, Rob. Let's go ahead and go to the bottom of page 104, and we'll read that part first, and then we'll come back up to the top.
Okay, page 104, everybody, of your big book. Written in 1939, when there were few women in AA, this chapter assumes that the alcoholic in the home is likely to be the husband. But many of the suggestions given here may be adapted to help the person who lives with a woman alcoholic, whether she is still drinking or is recovering in AA. A further source of help is noted on page 121.
Excellent. All right. So kind of set the stage, and we'll get started here, kind of going through this.
Two wives. With few exceptions, our book thus far has spoken of men, but what we have said applies quite as much to women. Our activities in behalf of women who drink are on the increase. There is every evidence that women regain their health as readily as men if they try our suggestions.
Okay, so we're going to be kind of branching out here. It's going to be a good discussion with regard to other people, and I think that I think the extension is going to be obvious here. So we'll just keep going. We'll read down to where there is that double space break.
Okay. But for every man who drinks, others are involved. The wife who trembles in fear of the next debauch, the mother and father who sees their son wasting away. Among us are wives, relatives, and friends whose problem has been solved, as well as some who have not yet found a happy solution. We want the wives of Alcoholics Anonymous to address the wives of men who drink too much. What they say will apply to nearly everyone bound by ties of blood or affection to an alcoholic.
You know, this is one of those areas where it's probably the most difficult, not only for the alcoholic, but for the members of the family that are around the alcoholic. And I'm going to use the alcoholic as being generic to either male or female, and whether or not that's a wife, a husband, a son, a daughter, etc. So we've talked quite extensively in the past with regard to the difficulties that are apparent with recovery and the trials and tribulations that they go through in order to get to a place where the family is actually engaged in a positive manner, that they've begun to lay down their sword and shield, they're breaking down walls to allow themselves to be accessible and vulnerable to the alcoholic, and the alcoholic being accessible and vulnerable to the family member or the wives. So the point I'm trying to make here is that this is probably the area where there is an expectation of the alcoholic that the soonest that they can be forgiven, if that's a good word to be used now, that's what they're looking for. I've said before, as you guys have heard, after about 2 weeks of sobriety, I was looking around wondering why I wasn't being forgiven for all of my transgressions for, the months and years before. And I was animated about it. I was just like, come on, I have done what I'm supposed to do. I'm sober now. I've gotten the hang of this, and you should trust me at this point. Well, that's, I would call way premature, not just a bit premature, but way premature. And I'll also go on to say that of the year plus time now that I've got under my belt as a recovered alcoholic, that I still have challenges and areas that I have to work on with my wife and my two boys. My brothers have seemed to kind of bought into it. They've seemed to be okay. We seem to be tracking nicely. But as I've told you, my younger son took a period of time here this year, about 3 months, to step away from me. Has been doing some soul searching, and we are due at some point soon to have a discussion so that he can talk to me about some of the things that he's had issues with, as well as I also, to this day, have got little reminders every once in a while. They're triggers, I think, more than I would describe them as anything else for my wife, and she's still a little leery of me and my sobriety and my alcoholism. So that's kind of what we're going to dig into here. But I just wanted to give you that as a sponsor. I think you should be prepared to set expectations with the sponsee or the newcomer that this isn't going to be a quick and easy fix. All right. I don't think that, gaining your recovery and your sobriety is going to be quick or easy. It takes a lot of work. You have to find that inner strength. You have to be open to that higher power. And at the same time, it's going to take time. That's one of the things that I think most alcoholics are impatient about is time. So as a sponsor, I would just recommend that you are prepared to set expectations with that newcomer, with that sponsee that's finding the big book of recovery and going through the steps and the program as a whole, which is beyond just the 12 steps, and starting to recover. All right, Rob?
Yeah, I just want to throw a couple of things in. This chapter was written by Bill. This is a great guide to use for sponsorship, as Leo said, and it shows us how to deal with someone who drinks, someone who is trying to get sober, or someone who has just got sober. Also, this chapter does seem a little dated in parts. Keep an open mind, and remember, it says to wives, but this can be just as well changed to spouses. So please keep an open mind when some of the things great. As wise of Alcoholics Anonymous, we would like you to feel that we understand as perhaps few can. We want to analyze mistakes we have made. We want to leave you with the feeling that no situation is too difficult and no unhappiness is too great to be overcome.
Yeah, we're going to stop a couple of times here, but I think that this is an important point, and it's one that I think that doesn't get enough coverage. When you have been in meetings and you have heard the stories of some of the folks that have recovered from alcoholism, you're amazed at the fact that they were able to do it. If their story holds true and they hit the rock bottom that they hit, and you're doing that, as we all do, that comparison, you're going to find that it is kind of crazy that this person was able to pick themselves up and actually do the program, find that higher power, get that inner strength, and be able to recover from what I would say is probably like, holy cow, how the heck did they do that? Because I knew that it was tough for me, but I couldn't imagine being in the same situation as X, Y, or Z person and being able to do that. So I think that there are limitations. I would say that a lot of families don't make it. It's in part based on some leadership guidance and kind of collaboration, the ability to communicate, which is an important factor in anybody's recovery. But at the same time, we'll see that if there is a will, there is a way, and we can certainly get there. All right, Rob?
We have traveled a rocky road. There is no mistake about that. We have had long rendezvous with hurt pride, frustration, self-pity, misunderstanding, and fear. These are not pleasant companions. We have been driven to maudlin sympathy, to bitter resentment. Some of us have veered from extreme to extreme, ever hoping that one day our loved ones would be themselves once more.
Yeah, and that's the hope and the wish of everybody that's around a loved one that's an alcoholic. And I think that that's an important also distinction here, that there is going to be just as much of an anticipation and a will and a want for things to stop. First of all, the debauch, the debacles, the sprees, the words, the actions, etc. They want that to stop immediately, and they want it to be for good. So there's an impatience as on the receiver side, just as much as there is on the alcoholic that's trying to recover. And they're going to have their own resentments. And I think this is a good thing to do as well. Remember, as the alcoholic, you're working on your side of the road. You're going to work on your resentments. And this is where it gets to be really difficult between the two, because you want to work on other people's resentments. You want to point fingers. You want to blame. You want to try to deflect. And that's going to happen. And you're just going to have to struggle through with fighting that urge to do that as an alcoholic. And then at the same time, if you have access to the family, their own resentments are going to have to be dealt with on their own. And hopefully they're able to do that. And if you are good with the communication and the collaboration, sharing the book with the family and letting them know what's going on. I mean, I'll raise my hand. My wife has been a part of my recovery. One of those that is unique in that my father-in-law actually studied alcoholism, wrote a book on alcoholism back in the 1970s, and is a very good understanding and awareness of it. So you can imagine from an academic standpoint, there has been some really rich discussions that I've had with my father-in-law about my alcoholism and about alcoholism as a whole. And I would just tell you that there is going to be a lot more understanding if you are communicating and collaborating with your family, letting them know what the program is, walking them through the steps, and kind of explaining it. I think that is an enriching kind of activity, and one that's important for both the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic to go through in order to be able to get past some of these resentments and fears. Bob?
Okay, we're on page 105, everybody. Our loyalty and the desire that our husbands hold up their heads and be like other men have begotten all sorts of predicaments. We have been unselfish and self-sacrificing. We have told innumerable lies to protect our pride and our husbands' reputations. We have prayed, we have begged, we have been patient. We have struck out viciously. We have run away, we have been hysterical. We have been terror-stricken, we have sought sympathy, we have had retaliatory love affairs with other men.
Yeah, so I can probably raise my hand and say that all of these have happened. I would stop at the last sentence. I don't believe that ever happened in my life with regard to my wife. But at the same time, I can tell you that my wife has lied for me and has begged, etc. And been very nice about things, tried to be accommodating, tried to help me moderate, if you will, and at the same time, kind of, lay down the law and shut things down and let me know that in no uncertain terms and in the absolutes, either stop or else, if you recall. I want to just kind of go through this, that I think all of us to a person can probably what's the word I'm looking for, Rob? Can relate to what is being said here. Rob?
Our homes have been battlegrounds many an evening. In the morning we have kissed and made up. Our friends have counseled chucking the men, and we have done so with finality, only to be back in a little while, hoping, always hoping. Our men have sworn great solemn oaths that they were through drinking forever. We have believed them when no one else could or would. Then in days, weeks, or months, a fresh outburst.
Yep, and that's just so true. And I won't add too much to this. We'll just keep going, Rob.
I just want to throw in that when we read Bill's story, Bill wrote in the family Bible that he was through with drinking. So his wife thought, he really means it this time. But what happens? In a short while, we're back drinking. The promises that we make, the oaths that we take, all these things, we're against defense against the first drink. Melody. Hey, Wes, we are on page 105, your favorite, my friend. We seldom had friends to our homes, never knowing how or when the men of the house would appear. We could make few social engagements. We came to live almost alone. When we were invited out, our husbands sneaked so many drinks that they spoiled the occasion. If, on the other hand, they took nothing, their self-pity made them killjoys.
This is brought back a lot of memories. So yes, I identify with this. I think most people can as well. We avoided going to certain events due to my alcoholism. We also avoided having certain people invited and coming over to the house because of my alcoholism. I used to have this technique of going out to a restaurant. I would go to the restroom and I would talk to my I'm just having a hard time with words today, Rob. I apologize.
No problem, Leo.
The waiter, I would pull the waiter aside and I'd say, I'm going to order drinks, but I want you to put alcohol in it. And there I would be off to the races, and unbeknownst to anybody at my table, until one day when it was realized and found out. And I got to tell you, I really hurt my wife that day. She felt like a chump, and I treated her like that. And it was one of our favorite restaurants. And it turned out that she was so embarrassed by the fact that, the waiter was doing what they were doing, that we've almost never gone back to that restaurant because of it. So I really destroyed what was something that was good between my wife and I because of my drinking. So these are important things to kind of get out in the open. They're going to have to be talked about. They're going to have to be acknowledged, and they're going to have to be admitted to. And I think that's part of this recovery that you're going to go through as an alcoholic. And what you're trying to find is that open and honest communication is going to help you clean up your side of the road. It's going to get things out in the open, and it's going to be able to be positively dealt with, if only that they are negative to begin with. So this is important. I know that I've been out and I felt like if I'm not going to drink, I just sit there and I mope, and I'm quiet. I don't want to engage with people, and it's obvious. So a lot of reality here for a lot of alcoholics and a lot of those that are around alcoholics.
Yeah, I can so relate to this. Either we sneak a few drinks in before we go to the engagement, or when we get to the engagement, we hang around the bar or around other people. I was very involved in the martial arts, and the person that I trained under was one of us, whether they admitted it or not. And because I was the senpai, or the teacher's helper, he used to make me go and get his drinks and bring them to him. And his wife absolutely hated me. It's the role that I was given. And I was just doing what I was told, which is what I was taught in the martial arts, is whatever the sensei says, you do. You don't ask any questions. Boy, the looks I used to get from her. Also, when I used to go out to parties, when we think about it nowadays, now that I'm sober, I think about what can I bring to the party, not what I can steal from the party when I was being selfish and self-centered. When I go to a wedding, what joy can I bring instead of, how many drinks can I have? It's an open bar. It's a whole different mindset. It's a whole way of thinking. And boy, I'm sure everybody knows how excited I am about this program, what it's done for me, and what it can do for, people that are still struggling. And I just want everybody to get it. But you know what? Not everybody's ready to get it at the same time, but how much I love it. So I hope that comes across. And if it doesn't come across,
Yep.
I'll keep working on it.
Hey,
There were,
Rob, we'll read down to and try to forget, which is
okay, you've got it. Thanks, Leo. There was never financial security. Positions were always in jeopardy or gone. An armored car could not have brought the pay envelopes home. The checking account melted like snow in June. Sometimes there were other women. How heartbreaking was this discovery? How cruel to be told they never understood our men. They understood our men as we did not. The bill collectors, the sheriffs, the angry taxi driver, the policemen, the bums, the pals, and even the ladies they sometimes brought home. Our husbands thought we were so inhospitable. Joy killer, nag, wet blanket, that's what they said. Next day, they would be themselves again, and we would forgive and try to forget.
You know, there's a lot of truth in this as well. We can look at a lot of things. I lost a position because of my alcoholism, and it was due to my undoing of it. I could have kept the job had I just kept my mouth shut, but I didn't one day, and it cost me. Luckily, I was able to rebound from that, but it was a tumultuous time at that point. I would tell you that, there have always issues issues and challenges, and the joy killer, the nag, the wet blanket, it's, other things that you might say is, can't you just leave me alone? If those people that are alcoholics and have really truly in the clutches of alcoholism want to, at that point, just to drink alone, because everybody around them is reminding them of their drinking, and nobody wants to be told of the problems that they're having with their drinking, no matter whether they're alcoholic or not. They don't want to hear it. So it is a true kind of deal here. I would tell you that all of us to a person, again, have had issues with bill collectors. They've had law enforcement, other friends and pals that were drinking buddies. And if there was other people in our lives, whether that be women or men, that has been an issue as well. And those are doubly tough, because that hits at the heart of a person and their relationship and their trust. So you pile on alcoholism and an affair at the same time, and you've really got a hole that you've dug yourself into, and you've got a lot of work to do to get out of it. It's not impossible, but it is going to be a challenge. So a lot of the other things seem to be more forgivable, but that seems to be one that you would have to have the most work and the most problems with. So with that, we'll keep going there, Rob.
Okay, and I just want to throw in that Bill is showing us how difficult living with an alcoholic can be. And it's just hammering home these points over and over again. We have tried to hold the love of our children for their father. We have told small tots that father was sick, which was much nearer the truth than we realized. They struck the children, kicked out door panels, smashed treasured crockery, and ripped the keys out of pianos. In the midst of such pandemonium, they may have rushed out threatening to live with the other woman forever. In desperation, we have even got tight ourselves. The drunk to end all drunks. The unexpected result was that our husbands seemed to like it.
Yeah, my boys grew up in it, and they were a little bit older at the end of my alcoholism. So they were impacted in such a way that as adult children of alcoholics, which is another program that's out there, I would just tell you that they heard, saw, and felt everything that other family members heard, saw, and felt as well. I wasn't much of a person to break things. That wasn't my MO, but I know I can see it happening, and the problems that come with that. And I did rush out a couple of times, so I relate to this drunk to end all drunks, although at the time I was just going out to be drunk and I'll show you kind of attitude. Should have been a time that I would have reached out to somebody to talk about these type of things, but I didn't. That was another thing for me. So I think as a sponsor, you've got to kind of watch out for this kind of behavior. It is certainly going to be a potential, especially early on. You as a sponsor, remember back in the day here that they used to work with people that would relapse a dozen times and they would still come back and work with that person. I would tell you now that seems to be less so. We've kind of gotten into a mode that if you drink, I'm not going to sponsor you. I'm mixed on that. I think if you've got somebody that truly doesn't want to stop drinking, you certainly don't need and want or should waste your time on that person. However, if you do have somebody that's trying, and at least you can tell that there is some genuine attitude about that, I would encourage you to assess this situation and decide for yourself as to whether or not you want to continue to work with that person. I can tell you my first sponsor flat out told me right at the very beginning, if you drink, I'm not going to sponsor you, period. There was no, it was black and white. There was no gray area there. I was in the mode of trying to stop at the time, and I certainly did. The problem is that about every 30 days I would drink, and luckily I was able to keep that sponsor for a period of time so that at least he did work with me. So he wasn't really true to his word in that regard, which I appreciated. But he at least got me on the right path. But with that, we'll just keep going. This is
Okay.
good stuff.
I just want to throw in a couple of things, Leo.
Yep.
Earlier in the book, in Bill's story, it talked about when Bill went to see a gentleman lawyer who, when they called the hospital, they say, yeah, we got a real corker. When he's sober, he's a really nice guy, but when he's drunk, he's black in the eyes of a couple of our nurses. You know, it can change our personalities so greatly. You know, and on page 21, I talked about Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you know, hardly, you know, moderately intoxicated, always to the extreme. Perhaps at this point, we got a divorce and took the children home to father and mother. Then we were severely criticized by our husband's parents for desertion. Usually, we did not leave. We stayed on and on. We finally sought employment ourselves as destitution faced us and our families. We began to ask medical advice as the sprees got closer together. The alarming physical and mental symptoms, the deepening pall of remorse, depression, and inferiority that settled down on our loved ones. These things terrified and distracted us. As animals on a treadmill, we have patiently and wearily climbed, falling back in exhaustion after each futile effort to reach solid ground. Most of us have entered the final stage with its commitment to health resorts, sanitariums, hospitals, and jails. Sometimes there was screaming delirium and insanity. Death was often near.
Painting a very dire picture here, and I guess you can see how what they've done in the first couple of pages of this chapter is that they've kind of started at the lighter side of alcoholism, and they've gone through and the moderate problems that come with alcoholism to now what we're talking about are the severe problems. You know, the sprees are closer together. They're worse and worse. The trembling, the recoveries are longer and longer, if at all, and the having to go to a rehab center or a hospital, finding yourself in jail, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, we did say that no matter what, you can recover from both the alcoholic and the alcoholism, and as a family member, a spouse, a significant other can find that with recovery comes a lot of reparation and mending of fences, rebuilding of homes and foundations of relationships and stuff. That all can happen. And I'll go back to it as long as there's good, honest communication and a lot of collaboration. So we are at that point where death was often near. You're actually at what we now call your rock bottom. And so we're kind of progressing here. and both as a sponsor and as a family member, watching out for this is hard. It's you want to just reach out and take it away from that person and be able to get them to a better place immediately. But we're at that point. Rob?
Under these conditions, we naturally made mistakes. Some of them arose out of ignorance of alcoholism. Sometimes we sensed dimly that we were dealing with sick men. Had we fully understood the nature of the alcoholic illness, we might have behaved differently. How could men who love their wives and children be so unthinking, so callous, so cruel? There could be no love in such persons, we thought. And just as we were being convinced of their heartlessness, they would surprise us with fresh resolve and no attentions. For a while, they would be their old sweet selves, only to dash new structure of affection to pieces once more. Asked why they commenced to drink again, they would reply with some silly excuse or none at all. It was so baffling, so heartbreaking. Could we have been so mistaken in the men we married? When drinking, they were strangers. Sometimes they were so inaccessible that it seemed as though a great wall had been built around them.
Can you only, I mean, yes, we can imagine, but imagine being the significant other that's dealing with us as the alcoholic and wondering, how unlucky they were in the choosing of a mate, a partner, a loved one, a husband or a wife. It is, they're misunderstandings. We talk about the mistakes. Again, in the early on, probably the alcoholic hasn't even thought to pick up this book, to even try and know that there's a program, understand it is way out there at this point. But if there had been somebody to intervene that was smart about alcoholism and the big book, there might have been some different responses. It's okay. It's going to happen. It still happens every day. The mistakes are going to be made. The good news is even those mistakes are recoverable. And it's just a hard thing for the family to watch the demise of an alcoholic, and at the same time, it's hard for them to continue to be able to come back to the alcoholic. When they see the recovery, they always are hoping and praying that this is the one. This is the recovery that's going to end all alcoholic debauchery and debacles. So this is just a tough time. This is when I think things are at their darkest. This is when the family is having the most trouble. It's hard for a significant other, and there's children involved, to try and speak to and rationalize things with the children, at the same time dealing with the alcoholic and dealing with their own problems and their own challenges and emotional heartbreaks. And it is baffling. I think it's a poignant point to make, and that is that the baffling nature of alcoholism. How the heck does this person go out, drink, get sick, pass out, black out, say the things they do the things that they do, and how is it that they can't just stop? It is amazing that for certain things I would never touch in 100 years. All right. But yet, you put a bottle of alcohol in front of me, I know I am not able to drink. And I tell you, if I started drinking again, I would look around going, how the heck did I get here? But it is still a risk that I live with. We all live with, and that is that next drink isn't that far away. Hopefully I've got the strength that I have, and I do now, with my higher power and the relationship I have with that, as well as I have gotten through that hard part, if you will, of sobriety. But I can tell you that if you were going to sit me in a room all by myself and put a bottle of alcohol in front of me, I can't tell you that I'm not going to pick it up and start drinking. So it's just a thing. So, but I know that I've got my inner strength and my higher power that's going to help me. I've got a great sponsor that I could lean on if it became necessary. And at the same time, I know that I'm committed to myself and trying my best to be the best person I can be. And I'm committed to my family to do that. And quite honestly, I'm committed to you guys. This is something that I find strength in, and that is that every Saturday I get a certain amount of renewal in my sobriety, and that's all due to you guys. All right, Rob.
Leo, I want to go to page 23.
Gotcha.
In order to hammer home the point that they just made. So page 23, everybody. These observations would be academic and pointless if her friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the habit an alcoholic drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, you will laugh it off and become irritated and refuse to talk. Once in a while, he may tell the truth, and the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Some of these drinkers have excuses which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. So I just wanted to throw that in order to show that, it's the craziness of, our brains are sick and our brains will tell us anything to make us take that first drink. As our friend Bill from New Jersey always says, the brain wants its candy and will tell us anything to take it. Under these conditions, we're on page 107 now, people. Under these conditions, we naturally made mistakes. Some of them rose out of I read that part, I apologize. How could men who love their wives and children be so unthinking, so callous, so cruel? There could be no love in such persons, we thought. And just as we were being convinced of their heartlessness, they would surprise us with fresh resolves and new attentions. For a while, they would be their old sweet selves, only to dash a new structure of affection to pieces once more. Asked why they commenced to drink again, they would reply with some silly excuse or none at all. It was so baffling, so heartbreaking. Could we have been so mistaken in the men we married? When drinking, they were strangers. Sometimes they were so inaccessible that it seemed as though a great wall had been built around them. And even if they did not love their families, how could they be so blind about themselves? What had become of their judgment, their common sense, their willpower? Why could they not see that drink meant ruin to them? Why was it when these dangers were pointed out that they agreed and then got drunk again immediately?
Yep. That is, again, this last part that Rob just read is that baffling feature. It is that why can't he stop drinking? There's some passages in the past of, if he only, why couldn't he stop drinking for her? The doctor said, if you drink again, you'll die. And there he is drinking again, that type of thing. So it's going to come, it's going to be confusing. It's going to be baffling. And I mean this for both the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. Why can't he or she just stop drinking? And the alcoholic's going to say the same thing. Why can't I stop drinking? And when there's not that good education, that good guidance, and that spiritual experience that we all have and have come to know. It is tough, and there is no common sense, if you will, in alcoholism. It just isn't there. So, all right, Rob.
Okay. These are some of the questions which race through the mind of every woman who has had an alcoholic husband. We hope this book has answered some of them. Perhaps your husband has been living in that strange world of alcoholism where everything is distorted and exaggerated. You can see that he really does love you with his better self. Of course, there is such a thing as incompatibility, but in nearly every instance, the alcoholic only seems to be unloving and inconsiderate. It is usually because he is warped and sickened that he says and does these appalling things. Today, most of our men are better husbands and fathers than ever before.
Yes. So a couple of good things here. One, exaggerated is a great word to use here. It does seem like both when the alcoholic is up to their ears in alcohol and they're in a debacle, a spree, and they are hard at it, that things become exaggerated. Certain things are said and certain things are done, and it's just crazy. At the same time, that remorse, that guilt that is felt and that is then expressed in a over reaction of in a recovery of I'm so sorry, I'll never do this again, you deserve better, and just this pouring out of affection and in an attempt to make up for is also exaggerated. So it's a great word to use in that situation. Incompatibility, I think, is another one that has to be watched out for. Certainly is something to be aware of. I'm going to say that the incompatibility isn't really the drinking or non-drinking, although that's an important component of it. But there are probably other factors that are at play when it comes to that type of thing, and it's going to be dependent upon the relationship that two people have, and can't really um, um, can't really define that for everyone as being common. But at the end here, it says, today, most of our men are better husbands and fathers than ever before. You know, that certainly is the hope in the prayers that are asked of trying to get that, to have a father or a husband that is not drinking, and I say this, a spouse, a better half, a significant other, whatever that might be. But when they stop drinking, a lot of things improve. All right. Now, is that the answer to everything? No. If you're an asshole before you, while you're drinking, when you stop drinking, you're probably still an asshole. I'm just going to say that straight up as far as that's concerned. So it's one of those things that you can't expect that everything is going to be sunshine and flowers. There's going to also be the human condition that we all suffer from, and that's still going to be around. However, dealing with those challenges is going to be easier because there is not alcohol involved. And that is what's an important distinction here. So things are better, and that is a truth. Things are better, but it doesn't mean that everything is going to be better. So, Rob?
Leo, there's a promise here in that last line. Today, most of our men are better husbands and fathers than ever before.
Absolutely.
Wow, something to look forward to. I just want to throw in that at the end of my drinking career, which I love how the book talks about it as a career, because I spent so much time making sure I could get the alcohol into the house, out of the house, you know, without my wife knowing it. But it was the pushing of away my wife and my family, because I wanted to be by myself so that I could drink the way I wanted to. I didn't want anybody to say, Rob, don't you think you've had enough? Don't you think, you know, you can? So what you do is you push people away so that you're by yourself, you're isolated, you can drink as much as you want, you know, and everybody leaves you alone.
I wanted people to leave me alone so bad I could hardly stand it. I wanted to just steal away, go to the garage, go to another room, just you know. And I also knew that if you just left me alone, well, I wouldn't be agitated, I wouldn't be angry, I wouldn't be upset with you. And so I was also one that would blame the other person for my being upset, you know, my anger. It was like, if you would just shut up and leave me alone, everything would be fine, you know. So it's you know, and I think all of us to a person have had some degree of that actual feeling. So, and that's at that point, drinking alone. I mean, how lonely is that? How far gone are you when, you know, alcohol is meant to be, you know, a social with other people kind of activity that is done in moderation, where the drinking isn't the focal point. It is the interaction and the enjoyment of being around other people that is, whereas for an alcoholic, it's completely the opposite. The alcohol is the focal point, and being alone and just drinking is the desired place to be.
That's where we cross the invisible line.
Yeah.
You know, where it's not social anymore. You know, we've lost the ability to choose whether we want to drink or not. We have to drink. And therefore, we need to push people away so that we can do it. It's a sad life. You know, and today, what I want to say is that I love being around people. I want them in my life. I want them around. You know, I don't want to push people away anymore. I want them to be around. Now that my kids are grown up, they're not around much anymore. So, hey, how did that work out for me?
Yep.
Try not to condemn your alcoholic husband, no matter what he says or does. He is just another very sick, unreasonable person. Treat him when you can, and so he has pneumonia. When he angers you, remember that he is very ill.
And we'll just go ahead and read the next one.
Okay. There is an important exception to the foregoing. We realize some men are thoroughly bad intentioned, that no amount of patience will make any difference. An alcoholic of this temperament may be quick to use this chapter as a club over your head. Don't let him get away with it. If you are positive he is one of this type, you may feel you had better leave. Is it right to let him ruin your life and the lives of your children? Especially when he has before him a way to stop his drinking and abuse if he really wants to pay the price. The problem with which you struggle usually falls within one of four categories.
Yep, we're going to actually stop here today instead of getting into these four categories for the next time. But I wanted to say a couple of things up here. There's kind of two sides of the fence here. One is try not to condemn your alcoholic husband, no matter what he says or does. It's just another very sick, unreasonable person. So there's supposed to be a bit of patience and understanding with regard to the sickness that is alcoholism. At the same time, don't let him get away with the hitting you over the head with either this or other things. And if you are positive that he is bad intentioned, then it is a decision that sometimes has to be made, and that the only way to save yourself from an alcoholic is to get away from that alcoholic. And abuse, things that are typical of abuse, whether that be extreme verbal, physical, etc., emotional, that is certainly something that has to be evaluated and dealt with accordingly. And absolutely, Della, I think I scared my boys more than I care to want to know or even remember. I scared other people with some of my anger that I would express while I was drinking. All right, as we usually do, I'm going to ask Bill to step in for a few minutes and share some of his insights, and we'll take it from there. Bill?
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, Leo and Rob. Real good job today. Yeah, this is a tough chapter. A lot of people think that this was written by Lois, and like you mentioned, actually it was written by Bill. And what Bill's doing, he's trying to give the spouse of the alcoholic some suggestions on how to deal with somebody that's just gotten sober or is trying to get sober. You know, like it was mentioned, you could change this to spouses or significant others, because at the time when this was written, virtually all the people in AA were males, and the sober person in a couple would have been the wife, and the husband was the drunk. But today the dynamics in AA have changed, so it could be either or. But what he's trying to do, he's trying to show somebody how to work with an alcoholic. You know, and you can use this as a guideline for sponsoring people also. What he's basically saying is don't fight with the alcoholic and don't bust the alcoholic's chops about their drinking. I don't know if everybody else does this, but I know I do. As soon as I'm told I can't do something, I want to do it twice as much. And I think that's the point Bill's trying to get across to. When you tell an alcoholic they can't drink, when you fight with an alcoholic about their drinking, they're just going to use that as an excuse to drink more. So basically, Bill's just trying to give some suggestions on how to deal with an alcoholic, no matter which part of the couple it is. When you're dealing with an alcoholic, sometimes you have to like grin and bear it and walk away, because fighting with an alcoholic is totally useless thing to do. You know, unless they've gotten sober and they're recovered and they're thinking straight, then you can get into some kind of debate or argument with them. But when you get into a fight with an alcoholic that's on the verge of still drinking, they're just going to drink again. And that's the point Bill's trying to get across to us here. That's basically all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you, Bill.
You bet, Bill. Okay, we'll close with the serenity prayer and then we'll open things up for some discussion.
Okay. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.